Welcome back to Beach Chair Chats. My name is Brian Kaiser. Today, here is a warm day in New England. For once, it's not raining, it's not cold, it's not cloudy, it is hot, and by tomorrow it'll be, well, cold. But I have a great guest today, Patty McLain. How are you today, Patty?
I'm fantastic, thanks.
Are you in New England? Are you no, where?
I'm in
Remind me.
Pennsylvania, so
Let's
not
see.
far.
But you're inland, so it's probably toasty there. Is it toasty there
It's
today?
still hot today and going to be cold tomorrow.
Pennsylvania. Well, Well, I'm glad to have you on today. So you're an educator. You work with mental health, right? With teenagers. Talk a little about that work that you do.
I started out as a high school English teacher, actually, and I retired about 11 years ago because my students were struggling with things that were happening outside the classroom. And
Hmm.
simultaneously, I was learning to navigate some tough stuff myself. And I realized that there was a lot that I was learning that my students could benefit from. So I transitioned into focusing more on wellness and stress management. And that led to a position I have now where I do prevention work in high schools where I teach high schoolers about healthy relationships, communication,
Hmm.
stress management on a bigger, more structured sort of way.
So what are some of the biggest, wow, I can't even talk today. Some of the big stressors that the students deal with on a daily basis. I mean, I work in education myself, so I see them, but what do you see from the students today?
I I get all sorts of stories, and there's the typical ones that we would anticipate, like peer pressure and mental health and drugs and alcohol,
Hmm.
bullying, academic pressure. Interestingly, the last time I asked the students to tell me what they thought the number one challenge was, more than half of them said fake people. And that
Interesting.
was
Well,
a
we live in the world of
fascinating
artificial.
response.
We live in the world of artificial intelligence. If you're online, half the stuff isn't even real sometimes. But true, fake people, being real and in depth, right? Um, so with that and said, how do you help a student get through that? Navigate those situations where they feel stressed out, dealing with fake people, healthy relationship. What's your guide to them to give them advice?
I don't give advice. I guess that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
The empowerment model puts the agency back
Hmm.
in their hands. And I really love for them to look at it through a lens of what skills do I need instead of
Hmm.
what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Because so much of what they're struggling with, so much that all of us are struggling with, isn't a character flaw, it's a skills deficit. So
True.
communication is a skill that we can learn. Nervous
Hmm.
system regulation, we can learn. Emotional intelligence, we can learn. And I think sometimes they get the message that there's something wrong with them or there's something broken if they struggle with those things. So just helping them play around with the ideas, taking the pressure off it. I don't give them tests or anything, so I have
Hmm.
a huge advantage there.
Well, no, it's good because they do struggle with a lot of things. And I'm a firm believer, and I'm not going to go on a tangent here, the online world that kids are present in and they live in this, I feel it takes away some of those skills to navigate and how to read a room, how to understand if someone's mad at me. I think I just responded to a post on Threads. Have you ever been yelled at on Threads or text? I'm like, I have. But how do you know someone's mad? Because you just read the messages, sounds mad. Are they upset with me? Then I respond. I always tell people, like with some of the people that I work with outside of here, it's like if you're in a relationship, do not have deep conversations that are important, intimate, meaningful, emotional conversations via text. And they're like, why? Because the minute you put it out there and then you see the bubbles pop and they just bounce and that person might go do something else and an hour later they respond, it's like, I hear you, gotcha. I'm like, you just put it out there. Go save that for real conversations. But healthy relationships are important. What are some things when students talk about healthy relationships? What do you see from them?
It's interesting that you bring up the communication piece because they're aware. The last school I was at, students were actually asking me where they could go to learn to have conversations like this. So
Hmm.
a lot of schools have a public speaking class,
Hmm.
but they get anxious when they have to speak with someone one-on-one.
Yes.
And so I give them a four-step communication strategy, which can work digitally. We sort of discourage them from going that route for the same reason. The number one thing that indicates how somebody's going to read your message is whatever mood they are in. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no way to know that before you hit send. So getting them to be curious and to ask questions. But the number one thing that works for so many of the skills I teach them is knowing that it's not healthy to try to engage in a conversation or make big decisions if you're not thinking clearly, and you
Mm-hmm.
can't think clearly if you're really wound up or stressed out or angry. So getting them to recognize the tools that will get them sort of into their prefrontal cortex, if you want
Yes.
to get nerdy about it, but
I'm all
theirs
about the
isn't done
brain.
growing, so as
Brain.
it is.
Yes, that frontal cortex is not developed, especially for young men. I will say this for my own gender. It takes us a minute to get that frontal cortex because we're all about motor cortex and just doing dumb male things, and we don't think inhibition to the wind, right? And we're invincible, and things don't apply to us. It's almost like egocentrism, but for older kids or adults or teenagers. Would that be classified as narcissism, though? Like you don't think so,
I
things
don't like to
apply?
pathologize things. I think people could have narcissistic tendencies
They
without.
do. You know, you get it just evolves into that, right?
There's a skill to navigate that unless it's a pathological challenge, and that's a whole different conversation.
True, that is very true. How about like insecurities? I have conversations with students who have a tough time managing like upfront teachers or like they have expectations, they have demands, and they see it as a threat, right? Or they can't handle conflict, anything that's difficult. Do you ever see that a lot with some of the students that you work with?
Most of the teens that I work with one-on-one in my coaching practice are overachieving, people-pleasing perfectionists. So
Okay.
that's probably
I had one like that
as a
today, yes.
recovering overachieving, people-pleasing perfectionist, I really relate to those kids.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality that I help them navigate, I love sort of the etymology of confidence because it just means
Mm-hmm.
intense trust.
Yes.
So, what little things can you do consistently to prove to yourself that you could trust yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be anything from, making their bed to, structuring one part of their routine and getting them to play with that piece. And I mean, insecurity is developmental as well.
Mm-hmm.
But helping them find the things that light them up, that they can be more secure about, and then use that as sort of a touch point when they're in a realm that they're not
Yeah.
comfortable with.
Well, I always say embrace the wins when you get them. You know, I was when I work with students, like I need to pass this class. I need to do all these big things because of X, Y, and Z variable, whether it be apparent pressure or this. I go just embrace the win. I always make a joke when I go through a new student onboarding. It's like, hey, why don't you just check your email and every day delete the useless ones? I do this. It makes me feel good. The email's there. I see it. I delete it. I feel like I've accomplished something and it's a small win. And I think sometimes they think so big that they don't see that process of, like I said, making your bed, doing these basic small tasks that add up to something of productivity that they can actually achieve things.
In BJ Fogg's work, which led to James Clear's work with Atomic Habits, there's a lot of research about how it's becoming clear that celebration is just as important as gratitude and mindfulness to anchor in the thing. So if we don't celebrate the wins, it's very difficult to make it a habit.
Hmm.
So I love that you encourage them to do that.
Well, as I always say, if you're trying to win a champ, I always ask them, I go, well, what does every sports team try to do? What's their goal at the beginning of the season? Like, well, to like play well. It's like, no, what's the goal? To like to win one, like the championship. Okay, great. Now we're on the same page. I go, but it's a season. You can't just expect to win the championship without winning practice, without winning the game, without going back over film and say, I messed up here. I got to do better. I think that reflection that students need to work on says, okay, I made a mistake. It's not the end of the world. Like high performing perfectionists, right? I've had students in the past, like, I just need to get the A, right? But I really want to give you the A minus. I just want to get it over with. It's done. The 4.0 dream is finished. We've got a 3.97. It's gonna be fine. But the perfectionist, right? It's there. So how for yourself as a perfectionist, how did you get yourself out of that mold?
Took a while. Brene Brown's book, The Gifts of Imperfection, is probably my number one favorite resource of all time after reading thousands and thousands of books. And I've gifted it to a lot of people, but I think it didn't really shift for me until I realized that there was no such thing as perfect. That's sort
Mm-mm.
of a low standard because you can't hit it. And I realized that my work is so much bigger than me, so I needed to get out of my own way in order to um, realized that I was also modeling the wrong thing for my students because a lot of teenagers get labeled as apathetic. And
Hmm.
honestly, I've never really seen legitimately apathetic teens. I've seen teens who are afraid to try because they think there's only one right way. And if they
Hmm.
don't do it perfectly, it's not worthwhile. So I needed to start modeling mistakes and messing up and show my process in front of the kids because if I showed up as the expert that I am, I was effectively isolating them from trying in a lot of ways. So
Hmm.
my students have always been my greatest teachers. So I think a big part of me letting go of perfectionism was realizing the impact of my perceived perfection on their performance.
Well, and perfection is if we aimed for being perfect in life would be boring, right? Because you're like, okay, I've hit this pinnacle, I'm perfect. Then what, right? So it's humbling, and I think it's a great to model that. I see. Also, you're a mom, right, of kids, right? Do you have
I have a
kids?
te one teen boy. Yeah.
All right, so they see it, right? Do they ever call it? Does he ever call you on it?
He's my, yeah. Um, Other people's teens are way easier for me to navigate. I think every parent will probably say that. But my son has a very different perspective than I have, but I've always encouraged him to challenge me and he rises to that challenge. He's not a perfectionist, but he is a high achiever. So he wants to do things well, but somehow the perfectionism gene skipped him. So he keeps me in check for sure.
Is he a teen that would like have the messy room and does he pick up after? No.
Yeah. No. He's not
Yeah.
he's not as academic as I was. He's more he wants to go into a trade and but
Okay.
his room is always clean and he's
That's
very
good.
structured in his routines. So he's very different than me in that regard.
Well, that's what makes kids unique. We always wonder how genetics get passed down to kids and what they get from you or the father or whoever it would be. And that's the best part, right, of being a parent.
He's also
But,
an adrenaline junkie, so I had to overcome my anxiety to support him in his endeavors because when he got his first dirt bike at 4,
oh,
I
geez.
still hadn't mastered mindfulness and it
Hmm.
came in really handy.
I said to my son, and he says, I want to get a motorcycle. I'm like, you don't need a motorcycle, but they're cool. I know they're cool, but you just don't need a
How old
motor.
is he?
He is going to be 21 this August, which is crazy that I know that he's going to be 21. I feel super old now saying that out loud, but they grow up fast. But like you said, young men, it takes a minute to develop. Academically, it's taking him a minute to get there, right? And it's okay. I've learned to accept it, right? Because I work in education. It's been part of my whole life. And so his first semester, I'm like, don't check his stuff. Don't check his stuff, right? I checked his stuff. And like, damn it. What's going on? Why don't you do the It's frustrating, right? So you have to learn to like let it go and see how the process goes as a parent. It's hard to let go, right? To do that. But let me
And
shift gears. Oh, go ahead.
realize that they have their own path. As somebody who went to college forever, the
Hmm.
fact that my son's going the trade route is actually really cool because it's getting me to look at the world in a different way, and it's definitely a field where job security is pretty strong these days. So
Well, I did have a student say that to me the other day, and he says, I want to go into a trade because with the influx of artificial intelligence, they're not, there is no AI for HVAC, right? You still need HVAC technicians to fix your, heating and air conditioning. AI cannot do that. So I've seen that shift because the job placement is there, right? So, but the path is what it is. And, if he goes into a great trade, you get cheap labor. It's like, for all those years I took care of you and took you to whatever you had to go to and all the lunches and dinners and fix my AC, please. Okay. So, um,
100%. And his
but
student loan debt will be way less than mine was.
oh yes, I go work at a school. It's free college, right? And it's like you guys have no idea how wonderful this is because you have no debts. Oh, but I was born too early. Probably I should have waited. I couldn't wait for that. My parents did what they did, and here I am. Um, so fun fact: you wrote some books. You mentioned books. Now you wrote some books. What's your favorite book that you've written, or talk a little bit about those books?
Probably the one that I'm working on now is my favorite, but
Ooh.
the one of the two that are published, I wrote one during the pandemic for educators because a lot of my colleagues were really struggling, and it was the same stuff the kids were struggling with. Just how to manage the unknown and still show up as the best version of yourself.
Hmm.
And there's no course for that in college. Like a lot of the well-meaning guidance we get as professionals is kind of close to suck it up. Uh,
Yeah, pretty
and
much.
you can't suck up your nervous system. And I wish somebody would have told me that because I tried for a really
Hmm.
long time. So my first few years of teaching were intense, and I learned a lot that I now use that
Hmm.
has become habit. But a lot of professionals, especially high achieving professionals, um, we can bypass those lessons because we can get by on achievement alone for a significant portion of things until we can't. So the 2020 was a big time in our field where a lot of people were realizing they needed skills outside of
Hmm.
pedagogical, curricular
Hmm.
best practices.
Well, the other thing too is burnout, right? I've had a few educators on here, teachers as of late, and you watch all the teacher threads online. It's like, who's all burned out? Who's ready for a summer? You see everyone's ready for the summer because they are just maxed out. Teachers, it's a tough job. I work in higher ed. It's a different world in college than it is in K through 12. I can't imagine K through 12. It's a completely different animal. But burnout's real for teachers, it's real for students, and having those chances to take a break and wind down. So when you think of mental health and kind of overcoming burnout, what are some of the things you do you talk about nervous system resetting? What are the things you do for yourself? I mean, you send me a bunch of beach photos, which I know the beach is it's a very important place for you. But what are some of the other things? We'll talk about those in a minute. What are some of the things you do to reset your nervous system?
Travels at the top of the list.
Okay.
When I'm training teachers on burnout, I very intentionally stay away from the word self-care because it's been relegated to a checkbox. So even though we know the ultimate goal is self-care, and these examples I'm going to give you are self-care, there's sort of a resentment or resistance to that when I'm training teachers to help them with burnout. Even pre-service teachers, when I work with them, there's self-care is not the route to go, even though that's where we're going to end up. But the things that are the most regulating are the things with rhythm. So I learned this from Dr. Bruce Perry's work. He is one of my biggest mentors in the becoming trauma informed, and it makes so much sense that things like music and movement and
Mm-hmm.
nature, they all
Mm-hmm.
have rhythm. So for me personally, I'm outside every day with my dog, hiking and listening to music about
Mm-hmm.
half the time. Sometimes I just like to soak up the nature without my
Mm-hmm.
AirPods, but at least the dog and nature and walking with my weighted vest sometimes there's music.
Well, movement is important. I think when people stay stagnant, it's so you get stuck, right? And you can't get out of those feelings. And so just getting outside, right? This idea of the beach chair concept. One, I love the beach. I love being outside. It's the most freeing place to be, in my opinion. Also, hiking is too, because it's important. Mindfulness and just being present in something so serene but so massive that the ocean is, right? That you can be in that space, all your sensory neurons are activated in your mind. We'll go back to the brain here again, and they're all activated or taking all this information, and you just feel good, right? So the beach photos you sent me quite a few of them actually. Do you remember which ones you sent me? There's one you have like this hope, you're on a horse. Talk a little bit about those experiences. You love to travel. What's one of your
Do. It's one
favorite
of the
places
perks
to
of
be?
being a teacher. You could take students with you and go all over the world.
Oh, nice.
I'm actually heading back to the Mediterranean in 2 months with some high
Jealous.
schoolers. So we'll be hitting the beaches in Greece.
Jealous. I have a
Um,
professor here he has a house in Greece. He does very well, and he's got a home in Greece. So when he comes back, he's like twice as tan as he is before he leaves. And I call him up and text him. It's like, "Are you in Greece still?" Yeah, not fair.
That's beautiful.
I know.
I think the horse picture you referenced is in Mexico. That was on my honeymoon, but it was a
Okay.
year after I got married because my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer right
Oh,
before we were married. So we weren't able
wow.
to go on honeymoon. He's alive and well. We went
Good.
on that.
All right.
Rode the horses in the water and commemorated his, it was almost a year after his last chemo when we got to go there. And it's been more than 20 years now since he's had any treatments. So
Nice. Great. That's exciting. That's like the best thing. This podcast has been great so far, but that's like awesome news. So shout out to your husband
yeah,
because,
hope is the crux of all the work that I do. And it was like that before I even knew about positive psychology and the science of hope and
mm,
the fact that people now study it in a lab. It's just why I think that he's alive and why I have the mindset that I do, because
yeah.
it's sort of counter to most of the people that I grew up with.
Well, it's easy, to lose hope nowadays. There's always so much going on, and there's a lot of negativity, and they try to refrain from going into what's going on in the world on this show. But it's a lot, right? And you see it all, even as an adult. Yeah, you work with teens, but even yourself, right? How do you remove yourself from just all the heavy that there is in a world?
This question comes up from my teenage students and the professionals I train and my friends on a regular basis. I want to make it really clear that toxic positivity is not at all anything I want to be associated with. And I believe that we have agency. So we have a choice in how we don't get to choose what happens to us. Nobody gets that,
No.
right? Always get to choose how we react, how we respond. So I'll make another literary reference here, but Viktor Frankl's work in Man's Search for Meaning really impacted me when he wrote that there's between stimulus and response, there's a pause. And in that pause, we find our power. And I think that
Hmm.
that's guided me so much over the last 20 years because when things get heavy, I know I can go for a hike. I can listen to some music. I know the biological piece that's going to move the lever, but we're a beautiful mix of biology, beliefs, behaviors. So if I can dial in those three things, it helps me show up as the best version of myself, regardless of what's happening in the world. And I think
Hmm.
that what's wrong is always going to be there, and so is what's right. So I want to
Yeah.
be sort of an exemplar of that side of things, just to balance it out.
I like that phrase between stimulus and response or the pause, right? I think sometimes people don't take that pause. I think it's important to do that because when you become reactionary, then you get in that toxicity phase, whether it's positive or just toxic, of people stimulating with something they say, they do something to offend you. And it's easy to like, I want to respond because I don't believe in it. I'm against it. Sometimes taking a step back, right? Find almost like an adult timeout, go, I get away from it, unplug. It's easy to, I try to refrain myself. I don't get too amped up online. I don't. I see stuff. I was like, I could get amped up. I could comment. I could make a statement. I just don't. Because what it ends up doing is it leads that in. And it is important to take a break every now and then from it.
And it's a practice. It took me years to learn how to pause. It took me years to feel safe pausing
Hmm.
because things were so chaotic that when I slowed down, it didn't feel safe or comfortable. But one of my students, we were talking about the fact that the phrase of the year for last year was rage bait. So as I'm teaching them communication and regulation, a ninth grader was like, it's not rage bait when it's online, it's engagement bait. So people
Oh,
post that stuff just to get clicks and likes and make money. So why would I want to take the bait? And I was like, that's very wise. Thank you, ninth grader, for giving me that perspective.
they always have the trends that I'm always behind the eight ball on. It's like, oh, rage bait. Cool. I just learned about that. Now it's already expired. Now it's
Well, I
engagement
don't
bait.
even know if it's going to be a new thing or if that was just the student's perspective. They're like, you don't have to take the bait, and if you do take the bait online, you're putting money in their pocket. And I was like,
Exactly.
dang.
I see people like, I just want people say, I want to comment. Don't this, why bother? It doesn't do any good. It just
It
makes
does
you
bump it up
feel
in the algorithm, so everybody like
that is
sees more.
true. I have noticed it. My posts online have been pretty basic. It's either a photo, it's either motivational stuff, and then occasionally I'll post a controversial thing that's about what's happening in the world. Who blows up? So the
Today I got
algorithm
a
does
comment
work.
from Excel on Threads. I was really excited about that. I
Excel?
posted about overcoming my fear of spreadsheets, and Excel encouraged me. So I
Hey,
on Threads, it's like a happy place where you can just say like I love Top Gun, and then the Top Gun account will give you a thumbs up. So I'm
nice.
happy there. I got
Well,
to meet you
because
today.
exactly. And when I created the Beach Share podcast, so I try to create like a beach theme. I'm inspired by the Chrysler Buildings page. They have their own in New York, right?
Yes.
And so I'm trying to speak as if I'm the beach and what they would say, and I try to create that personality It's fun actually, and
Yeah.
so we have a good time with it. But I try to make it positive because we need more positivity, which you obviously bring a lot of positivity to the world you're in, with your family, with the kids you work with, and everything else, and stuff like that. So, where's the next vacation? We said you're going to Greece with students. How about without students? Any big vacation trip plans? Son,
I
the
have a good
hubby.
friend that lives in Denver, so I'm gonna go hang out with her. No beach there though.
I
My son's
know.
best friend just moved to Denver, and so he's gonna visit his friend, and I can visit my friend. Gonna go to a conference in DC, so still not the beach, but then
Well,
there's
if they change the
close enough
reflecting
to the
pool,
Jersey
yeah.
Shore that I could just go there for the day anytime.
Jersey Shore. I've never been to the Jersey Shore. I've heard it's beautiful. Never been. But it's on the bucket list. As far as beaches go, I've heard they're very nice. So
It's not like white sandy beaches or anything, but I also love
it's
one of my best friends lives in Rhode Island, so I can drive up to her house and she's like a few minutes from the beach. So,
nice. Rhode
uh,
Island's is like my neighbor, basically where I'm at. I was just there this past weekend. So
and she lives
Charleston,
in a place called Hope Valley, so
Hope
it's
Valley.
even.
There. See, it's almost like speaking to you maybe when you retire someday, right? You could end up in Hope Valley. It's just befitting, right?
So
Um, yeah, Rhode Island's beautiful. I mean, in Connecticut, people say, "Oh, Connecticut beaches are great." They're fine. They're free, but they're not great. So I could do the free route, which would make total sense, but I choose not to, and I choose to go pay to step on sandier beach that's softer. That's not gonna like break my feet with shells and rocks. So
Well,
I'd
my
be,
happiest childhood memories were Connecticut beaches because my family did not have a lot of resources, but we had one great aunt and uncle who had a beach house in Old Saybrook
oh,
or near
nice.
Westbrook. And so
Yes.
they let us come stay with them. And I thought it was the most magical, fanciest thing I've ever done in my life. So
Well,
it
when you're
inspired.
kids, yeah, when you're
Yeah.
kids, everything's magical, right? And I always find this fascinating too, speaking of with kids at the beach, right? And the idea of play, right? Natural play. It almost drives me bananas, right? When I see young people, even adults actually, sit on the beach and they're on their phones. I'm like,
How do they even
just
see the screen outside? I don't even know how that
you're so
works.
blinded by it. I'm like, I can't read anything. And I just put it away for a minute. And I don't know. I just maybe I'm just as we get older and stuff like that, we become more aware of those things and just like stopping time because time goes way too fast, as you know this. Like I said, if you're when you were a perfectionist and trying to do all the things, you probably wish you could stop time, but you couldn't. Because the other thing too with learning how to pause is learning to be okay with being bored, right? And I was just listening to Conan O'Brien needs a,
Lost art.
huh? Also
That's a
hard.
lost
Yes,
art.
I was listening to Conan O'Brien needs a friend, and he's interviewing Zach Galifianakis, which is a fun name to say. And they're talking about the world of artificial intelligence and how kids today just can't stop, right? They're always plugged in and being okay with being bored. And Conan talked about he wouldn't be who he is today without his childhood where they didn't have television through the school week and they didn't have phones, obviously. And so they got stuck with their own thoughts and boredom that they started to become creative, right? And do you see that with kids today, like learning the art of creativity? I know they're high functioning and like
I
perfectionist.
think the pendulum is swinging back the other way, to be honest with you. I have more hope after talking to like eighth and ninth graders than I do college students and adults because for example, the other day, one of the students said that they used ChatGPT to make their mom's birthday card,
I
and
saw
their
that. I actually got I got an
their
ad for that. Yes.
classmates were incensed. Like they were so mad. And I was not expecting that reaction because I just assumed a lot of them were doing that. And I assumed incorrectly because they feel very strongly that if it requires creativity or if it's supposed to come from the heart, that they want no parts of tagging in
Hmm.
help. And so that was great. But play is also the opposite of trauma. So the interesting thing there is like the AI toys and the AI companions, you can't
Hmm.
co-regulate with technology.
No.
And so I'm I'm concerned and curious how that's going to go as far
Yeah.
as getting them to attune to their environment and to other humans.
Hmm. I know. It's a concern of mine too. I've hear people ask ChatGPT, help. I need help with this. I'm going through some help me process this. it's designed to just give you kind of what you want, and it doesn't really address the issue. Like you need to own up to something because you did something wrong here. And so it's like a pat on the back kind of thing. So, but it's encouraging that you mentioned that kids are starting to be like more aware of this, and maybe the tide is shifting. Not to put a tide turn here, but ever since we come out of COVID, right? We're getting out of COVID. It's been a while, and they're back in school. They're back around their peers, and maybe slowly but surely, being present in classes, being present in spaces, we're going to start moving away, hopefully, from the online world as much as it is, because it is
Well,
here.
Jonathan Haidt just posted something on Threads not too long ago, or everywhere. I'm sure it's on his other platforms too, that 20% of teenagers are in an intimate relationship with AI. Like they're
Hmm.
turning to AI instead of to their friends. So I bring that to the kids and I'm like, what are your thoughts? And their answers are sort of shock and disdain. But then
Hmm.
when I ask them, what can we do to cap that at 20% or bring it back down? Like, how do we counter this? Their answers are simple but profound. They say things like, we need to connect more in real life. We need more kindness. We need more
Hmm.
connection, compassion.
Yes.
And so they get it. And they know that AI is just telling them what they want to hear. Because when I say that people are going to AI in that capacity, in every single class, I've had at least one kid say, but it's just going to tell you what you want to hear.
Basically kisses your butt, they say. But yeah, but it's encouraging to say that, and you're right about hope and kindness and being present in connections. Doing this podcast has been fun because I've connected with people that I never would have met in life, and it's been fun doing it. And Patty, it's been wonderful having you on today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. This is great.
All right. Well, all right. You take care. Enjoy your summer when you get your trip. Enjoy Greece and even Denver. So, and get to the beach as soon as possible.
Jersey Shore.